We will call this meeting to order of the BAWSCA Board Policy Committee on April 8th at 1:32 p.m. Two announcements before we start is that our Redwood City location is no longer, so if there are members of the public clamoring to get in, you are welcome to come down here to the Burlingame Parks and Rec, and we will welcome you here.
Or where Peter is.
Or in LA, that's right. Get on really fast, go down to LA. Also, we will not be having a closed session today. Board members probably saw the email where there are no updates, so we don't need a closed session. And with that, we will do a roll call.
Great. Chair Ragsdale.
Present.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Here.
Director Andrews.
Present.
Director Chambers.
Present.
Director Duncan is absent. Director Hardy will be here later. Director Pierce is absent. Director Stevenson.
Here.
And Director Vella.
Here.
All right, we have quorum.
We have quorum. Thank you. Okay, so just a couple of announcements, comments by chair. All the votes today will be by roll call, and we really do appreciate Director Stevenson participating from LA, and thank you for doing that. Peter, at any time, if you have anyone over 18 in the room with you, or if you have anyone who wants to make a comment on any particular item, just let us know.
Will do. So far, nobody in the room.
Okay, excellent.
Except myself.
They're on their way from Redwood City right now.
Okay.
And thanks to all of you. I know we were a little worried about quorum this time, but everyone has been so good about keeping us informed of if you're running late or you can't make it. And again, just very, very much appreciate that. So thank you, and please keep that up. And then the last thing is just regard to the content today. I know we've seen the work plan many times. It's always helpful to read it again and again, and I just appreciate seeing it, and each time I understand a little bit better. So thank you. And with that, go on to the consent calendar. Does anyone have any changes with regard to the minutes from our February 11th meeting? Yes. There was one typo. What was the typo again? It was
the one from or into the general fund?
No, that wasn't the typo.
No, it was.
What was the typo, Lourdes?
Yes. Yes, that's correct. So just to correct that on the attendance sheet from the members of the public on page 17 of our packet, not to demote him, we have a lot of respect for him, but Stephen Rinaldi is the vice mayor of City of Millbrae, and there he is. We have a correction on our minutes regarding Vice Mayor Rinaldi, and with that correction, if
I so move for the approval.
in a second.
I'll second.
Excellent. We have a motion by Director Vella, second by Director Hamilton, and we will do a roll call vote, please.
Great. Chair Ragsdale.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Yes.
Director Andrews.
Aye.
Director Chambers.
Yes.
Director Stevenson.
Yes.
And Director Vella.
Yes.
Okay. That passes.
All right. Consent calendar passes with that one correction on the minutes. And now is the time for our public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If there are any members of the public who want to address the committee on any items that are not on today's agenda, please let us know. I do not have any cards, so I think we will move on to the first action item, and that goes to CEO Smeagol.
Great. Thank you, Chair. So this is a much shorter, more condensed presentation than the last two on the work plan and the budget, and gives our staff's recommendation for the assessment for the next fiscal year. So I'll just jump right into it. As you'll recall from the board meeting which is now about 3 weeks ago. The condensed version of our work plan is here. So we're continuing our role in managing the water supply agreement to protect member agencies' financial and water supply interests. And this includes a review of the role of SFPUC's debt in setting rates. And then in addition to that, negotiations toward necessary amendments that are required by the contract by 2028. And so those are going to be some of our big work aspects for the year. We continue to administer the bonds as per usual. We continue to oversee the water supply improvement plan, the 10-year CIP, and the city and SFPUC's asset management efforts, including a new concept, which is the review of what we expect to be a strategic asset management plan that San Francisco has recently told us about, that will be part of the State of the Water System report. So we normally evaluate the State of the Water System report, provide comments back as part of our role, and we will do that with the strategic asset management plan as well. Continue to monitor the SFPUC's alternative water supply planning efforts, participate in the Bay Delta and FERC proceedings. Those are typical things that we do. And then, as we talked about last month, complete the development of our Strategy 2050 roughly at mid-year, and then for the remainder of the year, plan specific implementation of work efforts that come out of that strategy project. And then the last bullet there is implementing our core and subscription conservation program. So that's in summary. That's a kind of a one-page summary of the work that we do that we talked about at the last 2 meetings. The operating budget has not changed since the board meeting. It's almost 4% lower than the budget that you approved for the current fiscal year, about $200,000 lower. And just some bullet points here. Again, that's $5.34 million. Includes a budget allowance for a 5% increase in salaries for COLA and merit. The COLA this year, and we'll get into that in the next agenda item, but the COLA this year is about 3.1%. And that equates to a total per customer cost of $2.83 a year per person. That's 14 cents less than it was in the current fiscal year. And you can see with the pie chart how that's divided up. And again, this was information provided at the board meeting. It hasn't changed. So most of the efforts are toward reliable supply and water at a fair price, with a big component also of agency operations, so managing the staff. So our considerations for funding the operating budget, again, the primary source of funding are the assessments on the member agencies. We budget sufficient resources to achieve the desired work plan results. We spend only what is needed to achieve those results. And we try to apply incremental and prudent increases as necessary and maintain a prudent general reserve. So our general reserve guidance is that the board has adopted is between 20 and 35% of the annual budget. At the end of the current year, or right now actually, that is about 25%. That's where we sit now. I'll get into a chart about the various options for next year. So last fiscal year, the board adopted a 2.3% increase. And just for clarification, the amount that was collected in assessments was lower than the budget last year. We were relying on the reserves to pay for part of the required operating budget, and that is proposed to be the opposite this year. In other words, that I'm going to jump to that now. So the assessments that you can see in the upper left, 5.4 million, were not enough to cover the operating budget in the 25-26 framework, and it required, or would have required, had we been exactly on budget, a transfer of $152,000 from reserves. All of the proposals that staff has shown for the committee today are either no change to the reserve or adding money to the reserve. And so by leaving the assessments very close, either not changing them or increasing them very slightly, we'll have the effect of having more assessments than our expected budget, and therefore money going into the reserve. So we would go from 25% reserve that we have now to anywhere from 26 to 29% of reserve, depending on the option that is chosen by the board, recommended by the committee and chosen by the board. And so we leave this with you. The options, as written in the memo, are we could decrease the dues or decrease the assessments to match the budget. We could leave the assessments the same, and that would result in about a $50,000 increment going toward the general reserve. We could increase the assessment by about 1%, or we've shown another option here of 2%. And of course, happy to do any other scenario if the committee or the board thinks that another scenario is appropriate. Staff is proposing a 1% increase, option 3. And the rationale here is that we know that there will be increases in the future. Better to have smaller increases over time rather than wait for a big increase at some point in the future. But obviously we're talking about very small differences, and so to the extent that the committee wants to do something else, wants to go with 0 or something else, all of these would fit into our guidelines for a budget or for the budgeted amount of general reserve. So there's no issues there. And so staff's recommendation is that you approve the work plan, that you approve the proposed operating budget, and our recommendation again is for option 3, which is a 1% assessment increase. So I'll leave it there and hope to have good discussion.
Excellent, thank you. So why don't we start with if anyone has any questions about the work plan aside from the recommendation, and then if there are no questions, we'll go into discussion on that. Are there any questions about the work plan? And Director Andrews.
I don't know if it will fit in any other items currently for the work plan, but just more information about water usage for data centers and bringing something to the board to review, and partnering with Bay Area Air Quality District. Well, now they changed their name. It's BAD now, right? It's BAAD, whatever the Bay Area Air
Bay Area
District.
Air District?
Yeah,
Is
they're
that what
bad
it is?
now.
Oh, they're bad, okay.
If you can talk to that entity to see what they're doing, because it seems like everyone's trying to catch up on water usage and what the impacts are. And I don't know if it fits on any of these current items, but I don't want to add more to your work plan.
Yeah. Maybe, Tom, I don't know if you have a mic close to you, but we do have conservation programs that we both core and subscription, and we do provide information as part of that. So we could certainly look to see what we are already offering as far as best practices and that sort of thing. We also work with Alliance for Water Efficiency and others as part of the existing work plan.
Well, I'll mention that as General Manager Smagel said a bit earlier, one of the efforts that's a follow-up from the long-term water supply strategy is to develop new work efforts that BAWSCA should concentrate on in the years ahead, or maybe even the short term ahead. There could also be some immediate action items for us to do. As part of the demand study that our staff have worked on, we did have the consultant look at the potential impact of data centers on water use. So this is maybe my long-winded way of saying it is of great interest to do a deeper dive or understand more how data centers might impact water use. And I know it's a particular interest of the city of Hayward and you. So I can say that there are 2 efforts. One's associated with some of the conservation programs that Kyle Ramey runs with us, and the other one is associated with follow-up from Strategy 2050. So I can warrant that we will be working on it, and we'll get back to you probably in the fall as to more details.
Yes, if I can have whatever information you have via email, but then a short presentation at the board would be great.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks. Al?
Well, the demand study did have a section on this, so possibly Danielle, you could send her a link with the PIN site to it.
Yeah, we can do that, and again, there's probably going to be more follow-up from it as well. So we can certainly have a one-on-one with you to talk more about that.
Thank you. And Director Hardy's not here yet, but she might want to make that a one-on-two for Santa Clara as my guess. Yes, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Director Vela.
Yes, thank you. Tom, one of the things that I know that you monitor, BAWSCA monitors and keep a close eye on is rates.
Mhm.
So if we were asked about rates in the work plan, which area would they be in the work plan, bullets? And can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. There's two main areas of focus for BAWSCA that would generate either rate savings or evaluation of rates. So one is the work that Christina does in administering the annual sort of, I would call, expense budget of San Francisco and evaluating the allocations. Spends a lot of time with the San Francisco accounting staff to make certain that all of the costs of the regional water system are fairly allocated between all of the parties. We also, as part of the work that she does, work with San Francisco on their annual, the annual estimate of the new rates and going back and forth oftentimes on how did we get there. And you heard at the board meeting last month about how those processes, how we go about those processes with the balancing account and that sort of thing. So that is one aspect. It's a significant part of the work that Christina does. The other part, which is of long-term interest to the rate, is the Water Supply Improvement Plan, the 10-year CIP, and that is what a lot of what Tom's group focuses on. That's in the water supply reliability section, if you will. So we're looking at infrastructure there and evaluating, and it's a double-edged sword, as I think I talked about. You want to evaluate San Francisco's infrastructure to make certain that we're not paying too much for infrastructure, we're not building unnecessary infrastructure, but at the same time, we also have that inherent prerogative or that interest in making certain that San Francisco does what they need to do to ensure that the system's reliable. So it's kind of it's two sides of the same coin.
Correct, yeah.
There's kind of a middle ground on that. So Tom and his team and his consultants work very diligently on that. There's a lot of work on that most of the time.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, because everything kind of boils down to that, to our customers, they don't know, the cost of the system to run it, to maintain it, to all of that.
Right.
It's how much is costing me.
Right.
So that is the thing that we need to be clear to all our members and their customers.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, why don't we move on to a discussion about the assessment amount? I don't know if we want to go back to the slide where we recommended the.
Yeah.
And does anyone have any discussion or commentary on the assessment? Director Chambers.
Yeah, I think one of the deals on assessments and what BAWSCA charges customer agencies is really stability. And, I think that a 0 or 1% increase is good. Even though our budget went down by 1%, we're increasing a little bit. It's been kind of crazy. We just coming off a water management charge. So that means in February, March, April, May, June, what BAWSCA's expense to the other agencies is a lot lower, and now we're going to increase it 1%. And I'm kind of wondering about 1% because with San Francisco going up 7.4% or whatever it is, maybe this is a time that we should hold our assessment to 0. Because of the big San Francisco increase. So I think I would prefer 0 if we could. For sure, we need to maintain a stable income for BAWSCA. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And Director Hamilton?
So I'm also going to advocate for zero. I'm usually of the mind that, you know, maintaining slow increases so that to avoid larger increases later when you can't avoid them, to help mitigate those. But in this case, with the 7+%, that came as a surprise to almost everyone. I think now would be a good time to maybe keep things at zero, especially given that we're still going to be able to transfer to reserves at zero. You know, we're maintaining our assessment to budget ratio at still at above 100%. So I'm going to advocate for zero.
Thank you. Director Vela?
If there was a negative percentage increase, I will vote for that. Is there one?
There is option one.
Negative. Very dangerous. So, and of course, we all would love to have a zero increase. And I look at this as having a tenant and a rental. And because the tenant is so nice, you tend not to increase the rent, whereas your taxes increases, your maintenance is increasing, the water is increasing, electricity is increasing, and then you get to a point where you tell the tenant, we have to increase it by 10%, and then the war starts. I think it's a slippery slope that we go to zero increase. The 1% is very, very minuscule. It's very manageable to all, and it's a good practice that when we see all these things going up, that we do just a little bit so that we don't get caught later on. So to me, it will be I think that we discussed it before, and we opted for the 1%, and I'll go for the 1%.
Okay, excellent. And I don't see Director Stevenson having a comment yet, so we're going to go back to Director Chambers.
Yeah, I would also like to point out that if we use 90 to 95% of the current year's budget, that leaves $70,000 to $140,000 that's going to may get rolled back into our general fund.
General fund,
Now,
absolutely.
I do want to make sure that we don't think about doing an optional payment for our retirement system until after the audit and
Agree.
everything's are settled out.
I agree, yeah, good point.
But, if we don't put any money aside or any extra payments aside for, for retirement, I think we could live with a zero. Again, do not think we should do a negative, but,
No, I didn't, I would, that would,
I think we could probably live with zero, unless staff feels strongly differently.
mhm.
But staff should be congratulated for keeping our budget down.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Keep up the
you.
good work.
And Director Hamilton.
So, Director Vela, to your comments, and I think I made the same point that you just did in terms of why it's always good to just keep a steady increase. What's really driving it home for me is the 7% increase that was unexpected.
Good
We had told everybody that it was going to be one or 1.5, and then it turned out to be 7. So I think even though the amounts that we're talking about are not large, and it's really not going to move the needle in any significant direction by going to 1 or going to 0. I think the symbolism of it is actually what's driving it. So we're doing what we can to help mitigate that 7%. It's again very small, especially when you get down to the per person amount that it costs for BAWSCA each year, which is still an amazing statistic. I love it. I love seeing that, all the great work that we do, and it really doesn't cost all that much. But that's why I'm advocating for the 0 this time, and I would never advocate for the decrease. And I don't think it's gonna be a slippery slope unless, unless we have lots of very unexpected rate increases going forward.
Which we
Excellent.
did already.
We had the one.
Thank you. And Director Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you. I guess maybe I have a question before my comment.
Yep, it's fine.
The mechanism by which, you know, that we were surprised with the 7+% increase is also the mechanism potentially in the next year where we're recapturing some of that if there are overages. Is that fair? And so part of my response hinges on what do we think the likely scenario is of recouping some of the 7% in the upcoming year, given forecasts and where water levels are and drought and all that. Because if there's a likelihood that we will recover a little bit and have some relief, then I would advocate the 1%. But without a clarity on that or confidence in that, I think we do have the symbolism of telling our ratepayers that we're doing everything we can to keep that expense level. So I would advocate 0% unless somebody could show me that we'll have a chance at a pretty good scenario in the following year.
Excellent. No, I think as far as the question was, and as far as potentially recouping, I'm going to throw that to you.
Yeah. So in answer to that question, I think, obviously, I suspect that you knew the answer was we don't know. Sales are very high at the moment, but we're expecting some April rain here in the next couple days. So it's very difficult with any certainty to predict what water users are going to use throughout the rest of the year, because that's 15 or more months from now. So yeah, I think the answer to your question is what you thought it was.
So Director Stevenson, that would put you at recommending 0. Okay, great. And not to throw you under the bus who just came in, Director Hardy or Director Andrews, we're just getting an assessment so we can come to, if we can come to a consensus to bring to the board on the 0 or 1%. So we'll start with Director Hardy.
I apologize. I made it here safely and
Good.
couldn't ride the train because I came from South San Jose for a meeting. But I too was a little surprised to see the option 3 put forth by the staff, because I really was excited to say we could look at a 0%. And I think that sends a beautiful message. Now, of course, we know what the snowpack isn't this year. We know some of our headaches, but this is our operating budget for what BAWSCA needs to do. So I felt very comfortable with the 0%. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Director Andrews?
Can we do like a 6-month just check-in? I know we have to approve it now, but just to make sure that we're on track and not expecting any budget overages during the mid-year, I guess.
Yeah, I think we usually do a
Yeah,
mid-year
right.
budget.
So maybe
Yeah,
we can
typically
revisit.
there's a mid-year update.
Yeah.
We would know at that time how much of this year's increase in reserve there might be. The assumption on the page here is that there's no transfer of reserve from the 25-26 budget. That could be different. That would be a different assumption by the end of the year. We would know by the end of the calendar year and report that to the board, and you could take corrective action.
Okay.
So certainly the board has that prerogative.
You don't happen to have a crystal ball, do you? No?
But,
Well,
but
just
I
ask.
like that idea of
Yeah.
explicitly calling it out in the mid-year budget review on how's our assessment doing? So
Right.
that's great. And then where does that lead you in terms of
0%
recommendation?
right now, but then in 6 months to see what happens. Just with world events, we don't know what's going to happen, so I'm just a little nervous about cost.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, so coming down to me, I really could be swayed either between the 0 or the 1. The landlord example, I know my mom used to say you have to raise the rent every year, and we never did. So I'm with they're nice, don't raise it, and I do like the message of the 0%. So we could either say the majority of board policy went with 0, or unless we can sway you to say the majority, so unanimous. Yes. Okay, so we can say the majority of board policy said, recommended the 0% and likes that message. Okay,
Okay.
great,
Would
thank you.
want to take a motion and a second and vote on that?
Yes, good call.
Okay.
Is there any motion on this? And then we have the recommendation on the board. Director Hardy.
I'm willing to make a motion that our recommendation as a majority is option 2 for the 0% increase.
And then the rest of, do you want to go ahead and do the rest of
other
it?
two things on
And
the,
then yes.
It,
And the proposed, yes, and the work plan and the results to be achieved and recommended funding plan option. The operating budget, yes.
Excellent. We have a
I'll
second.
And then just, the change is just the 0% increase as a majority of the,
And a second by Director Chambers, and
I'll
then
second.
I forgot to take public comment. So before we vote, do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, now we'd like a roll call vote, please.
Great. Chair Ragsdale.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Yes.
Director Andrews.
Aye.
Director Chambers.
aye,
Director Hardy.
yes.
Director Stevenson.
Yes.
Director Vella. Yeah, that's unanimous.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to action item B, CEO Smagel.
Great, so the next item is the adoption of pay schedules. Very small wrinkle here, which I'll get into, but generally every year we approve the pay schedule update for the staff positions. Realizing, sorry, there's a lot of words on this slide, and I know we had that discussion last month. I tried to do better with most of the slides, but now looking at this one, it's got a lot of words. But we're required by CalPERS to publish the minimum and maximum salary ranges for each position. What we're proposing here for fiscal year 26-27 is to increase the minimum and maximum for each position by 3.104, which is the CPI-U for this area. So that's what's in the tables that you'll see, and that's what's proposed here. In addition to that, we found a small error, an $800 error, I think it was $800 error, in the pay for one of our individuals for the pay schedule for 2 years ago, for the 24-25. And so we're proposing to correct that to just make sure that the salary that the individual was paid is consistent with the maximum salary schedule. And so that is also in the packet. So you have two schedules there, one for the upcoming year and one is a correction for the 24-25 year, and that correction only applies roughly to $800 for one of the positions. And yeah, that's basically it as we go.
And that didn't result in any change to the budget, correct?
Correct, yeah. What the person was already paid was not being reflected in the adopted salary schedule. So
Excellent.
it doesn't change any money out the door. It doesn't change the budget in any way, and it's incorporated in the work plan that you've recommended. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Do we have any questions or comments on this item B regarding the schedules? And Director Hardy.
Thank you. What I just wanted to make certain I understood is because we're a small organization and a lean and mean one, right? Well, not maybe mean, but we have talked about needing help with some HR. And is this an example of why we need some help with HR not catching some of these things? I just was curious while I read through this.
I mean, it's certainly possible that they could assist with this effort, although this is a fairly simple process. So maybe is the answer, and we can get into that in the next item.
Is it an example of why CalPERS is so complicated.
CalPERS is
So if there are no other questions, do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion for this recommendation?
I so move, yeah.
Director Vella, first motion.
Second.
Second, oh, I think it's a tie. We'll give it to Director Hamilton. And a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Chair Ragsdale,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton,
Yes.
Director Andrews,
Aye.
Director Chambers,
Aye.
Director Hardy,
Yes.
Director Stevenson,
Yes.
and Director Vella.
Yeah.
That's unanimous.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item C, which is CEO Smagel.
Great. So as Director Hardy just alluded to, we are in the process now of an RFP to come up with some assistance for our HR function. As most of you know, we required a lot of additional services from Hanson Bridget when Nicole Sankula retired. Some of that had to do with services that could have been provided by an HR consultant. So that got us on the hunt for maybe we could have ad hoc services that are available to us on demand when there are things that are outside of our normal course or things that we need assistance with. And so that's what we've written up is essentially an on-demand, on-call human resources proposal. We have sent that out to 10 potential interested firms, and thank you to Director Andrews. The one that you recommended, we did send it to them, and they were very enthusiastic. So hopefully they'll come back with a proposal, and hopefully a good proposal. Thank you for getting them included in our effort here. We will be reviewing the proposals with internal staff. Our office manager Deb and I are going to be on the panel, as well as some folks from outside, a couple of, I think, North Coast and Alameda County Water District, sort of HR professionals from those organizations, as well as someone from outside of BAWSCA, I think from the Dublin San Ramon Services District, who has that function there. A relatively similar size, slightly larger agency than BAWSCA. So we'll do that in early May, and at the board meeting in May, we hope to have selected a vendor and bring that to the board for approval. So what we're looking for from this committee is an understanding or recommendation to the board that we have followed our procedures, that and Allison can validate that. And if there's anything in the presentation to the board that you think might be appropriate for us to include, to talk about to win the board's approval for this function, happy to discuss anything else that we could provide to the board. We don't have much to give you now because it's really about the process. We don't know who the selected vendor or individual would be at this point, and we'll know a lot more when we get to the board meeting. So that, and sorry, and the very last thing is it's all in the budget, it's all in the work plan and budget, and so would be something that we would plan to be implementing in 26, 27.
Excellent, thank you. And now for questions, I think we'll start with Director Andrews. Sorry, start with Director Andrews for questions.
Oh, just wanted to flag that no preferential treatment. Just,
course.
it was just a recommendation to contact.
No, we're
Just
very
wanted
happy to
that
include them,
For the
yeah.
record for
No,
Allison,
very
so
happy
she knows. Okay. And then, are you able to share the names of for the companies that you reached out to, or those who will submit, or you? Because I know that sometimes when there's an RFP, you can share who submitted.
Right. Well, I'd probably ask legal about if we'd want to share who we reached out to.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly when we get actual submittals, which would be on Friday, the end of April 17th.
Okay.
Again, if you're willing, I'd like to actually confer with our general counsel to make sure I could share that with you.
Sure.
You're free to share it after the meeting. We just collected as many names of consultants as we could find from folks that used them.
Okay.
So, and it's on the website as well. So trying to throw a wide net.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we
But-
reached out individually to each of the potential 10 through email, and then had some follow-up as well.
Okay.
And part of that, I don't know if you could share, Allison. I don't know if you could share, but part of that list was gathered from Hanson Bridget's contacts of other agencies that have asked for the same types of services. So we're looking for firms that have worked in a
Yeah.
similar environment to
Right.
BAWSCA.
Yeah, like, we're general counsel to the Water Emergency Transportation Agency, and they just went through this process and had a bunch of submittals, and so we took, that's one of the lists that we took, everybody who submitted to them and who they reached out to, as well as other folks with the smaller agencies that use this kind of consulting.
Okay, great. Yeah, if I can have a list of any form, whatever list, I'll take
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's no problem.
Thank you. And now Director Hamilton.
So you asked for suggestions on how to frame this for the full board. And what I would recommend is, this proposal just makes sense. I mean, it makes no sense to have our own dedicated HR person when you only have 9 people on staff. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to rely on our more expensive legal team to answer these questions when we have them. So I think it just makes sense to have this new provider on call when we need them, and I think we should frame it that way when we bring it to the full board.
Thank you. And Director Chambers.
And it also makes sense based upon your presentation of the work plan last meeting where we saw that all of our current employees are at least 100% utilized or over. And I think having an on-call person for HR makes a lot of sense, and hopefully if somebody has a problem with it, you can bring that up. But you've already presented that at the meeting.
Thank you. And Director Hardy.
Thank you. I realized my name tag was out there. Maybe I should go get it.
Oh.
So, in the private sector, I'm trying to remember if 10 or above 10 is what hits the concerns. But that's when a lot of different things kick in. I don't know if that applies to BAWSCA as a public agency, but I do know that that's where a lot of different rules in California with a number of employees, and that will possibly, I don't know if that applies, but that could make things more interesting for us, especially because we know we're at 100% for every employee at this point, and we have flirted with the idea of, do we need someone else? Thank you.
And any other questions? I don't have any questions, but I agree with Director Hamilton, just in terms of giving the details that to the full board. I think the presentation that we had is great. And maybe just pointing out that the difference between a firm that we would use and using our lovely attorneys, but very talented and expensive. And then again, just, we all understand that it's a 9-person staff, but just emphasizing that, because I think we are BAWSCA is so professionally run. Sometimes we forget the entire staff is actually the people at the meeting. There's no one left at the office. So if someone does have a sensitive issue that maybe they don't want to share within the confines of the office, it's nice to have something outside. So just reminding people of that, I think, is helpful. And seeing no other questions or comments, do we have any public comment on this item? And I don't see any, so do we have a motion for the recommendation on the board?
I'll move the item.
And we have a motion by Director Andrews, a second by Director Vella, and roll call, please.
Chair Ragsdale.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Yes.
Director Andrews.
Aye.
Director Chambers.
Yes,
Director Hardy.
Yes.
Director Stevenson.
Yes.
And Director Vella.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we are moving on. CEO Smagel gets to take a little break, and we are moving on to reports and discussion by Kyle Ramey. He's going to let us know about the annual survey. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, board members. I'm excited to present this today because I'm typically working on this behind the scenes, and I'm excited to share how we collect some of this information and produce it in the report, and why it's important. So, since 1996, BAWSCA and its predecessor, BAWA at the time, conducted an annual survey of its member agencies to update key service area information. It's kind of a picture from a water use perspective of the region as a whole. There are 9 different sections within the report. Current water supply by source, current and projected water purchases from San Francisco Regional Water System, the projected water supplies and demand, which we produced via our water conservation and demand study of 2025, consumption by customer class, current and historical climate data, which we take from several different areas in the Bay Area, current and projected population, per capita water use, both current and historical, single-family water bills and rate structures for all of our agencies, as well as a comprehensive member agency profile list at the end of the document.
If that's not working, I can.
Yeah, go next slide. Sorry. So, as I mentioned, BAWSCA's annual survey presents key water resource information about BAWSCA's member agencies as a whole throughout the region. We collect this data via the Water Conservation Database. About 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, we relaunched the Water Conservation Database with a new consultant that's much more efficient and easier to collect the data. About every October, I reach out to the agencies to collect their water resources information. Then we analyze the data, pull it together, and present it in the graphs I'm about to show you in this presentation. And then produce the document sometime around March. So this is a pretty intensive project that I do on a yearly basis from October to about March. In fiscal year 24-25, the member agencies reported 192.37 MGD in supply by source. This is pretty average. Last year it was around 184 MGD. 58.9 GPCD in residential per capita use, which is very low. 98 GPCD in gross. 243 MGD in demand projections by the year 2050. Again, the source for that is the most recent demand study. And 1.8 million in total population, which is certainly up from last year. BAWSCA has posted this to the website, and we also have some infographics that accompany it in the various pages on the website as well. The first table I'm going to share here is the past and current San Francisco Regional Water supply purchases, including in lieu water. If you're unsure about what in lieu water is, San Francisco provides water in lieu of groundwater pumping for 3 of our agencies. That includes Cal Water South San Francisco, Daly City, and San Bruno. And they do this in order to allow for the groundwater to replenish during normal years so that they can pump during dry years. The table shows purchases from San Francisco Regional Water System. The customary purchases are in dark blue. The drought year are the shaded versions, and the in lieu water is the little red above that. One thing to take away from this is during each of the drought years, we do see a sharp decline in water use, which is expected. But it also shows that our investments in water conservation and our customers themselves really do respond to the need for conservation, which is great to see. But we do normally see it start to tick back up as the drought declaration is over. But one thing to note is that it never exceeds what the pre-drought number was, especially as you go as far back as 2012, 2013, which is the normal year before probably the most consequential drought of the last couple of decades, and we haven't even come close to coming back to those normal levels. Next slide. BAWSCA agencies rely on the regional water system for 2/3 of its total supply, and this is pretty unchanged throughout, at least as long as I've been doing the annual survey. Last year we reported 128 MGD in customary purchases, which hovers around 67%, which is pretty unchanged from year to year. Second most is other sources, around 30 MGD, about 15%. Other sources can include the Santa Clara Valley Water District purchases, State Water Project, local stormwater capture, things of that nature. And then followed by groundwater, recycled, surface water, and the in-lieu purchases that I mentioned on the last slide. Next slide. Very similar to the slide, a couple pages back. The one thing to note here is that water use continues to decline in the region despite a pretty significant population increase. The orange line is your population from 1975 to present, and the shaded regions and the total water use make up the rest of the graph there. So 26% less water use today compared to fiscal year 86-87, which is where it peaked, despite a 35% population increase. As I mentioned, we did recently complete our demand and conservation study in 2025. By the year 2050, we anticipate 243 MGD of total projected supplies. The regional water system accounts for around 60% of that. And then we do see some large increases in both groundwater and recycled water projects as we move into the next couple of decades here. We also have a little section for additional conservation at about 1.5%, and other sources making up about 14%. We also calculate consumption by customer class. This is slightly different from production, and which customer class use how much of the supply. So residential typically accounts for between 55 and 60% of the total supply. That does include multifamily as well. Commercial and industrial is second, followed by dedicated irrigation, and that's been rising in recent years because of more dedicated irrigation meters throughout our service area. Government, institutional, and other, and then non-revenue water, which typically always hovers around 7%. This isn't necessarily just water loss. It could be meter inaccuracies, or it could be just unaccounted for water. The way we calculate it is by subtracting the total production or total consumption from the total production. This is just another way to represent that same chart. It is, residential takes up most of the water use in the region, which is the blue lines, and then the other shaded areas are commercial, government, and dedicated irrigation. I did mention that we do report current and historical regional climate data. We do take the most recent 3 years, the shaded one being the historical average from 1906 to 2025. We do take 4 representative service areas: Redwood City, San Jose, Union City, and SF Airport, which is in the northern section of the peninsula, to give a general representation of what the total precipitation is within the service area. We also do total temperature, or median temperature, but didn't include it here, but it is in the report. Residential per capita is probably one of our more referenced sections. We have seen a 48% decline in the region since its peak at about 186 for gross and 114 for residential. The blue line being gross, the red line being residential. 58.9 is very low. I think last year was around 57, and the year before that, which is right when we came out of the most recent drought, was 55, which is the lowest in BAWSCA's history. So these are good trends to see, especially after the rebound of the most recent drought. I thought this table was interesting to show, as I mentioned earlier, in 2012-2013, which is generally the baseline the state uses for reduction targets because it precedes the most detrimental drought in recent history. At that time, we had an average residential use of 79 GPCD. We had over 15 agencies that had 71 GPCD or above. And then this year, 58.9 residential use, and we only have 4 now that are above 71 gallons per capita per day. So it is a significant reduction in water use within the region. The reductions reflect investments by our water agencies in their conservation programs and their customers' call to those conservation programs. The reductions also reflect a response to previous drought and sustained low use. The more they hear it, the more droughts that inevitably happen, the more consistent they are to respond and keep that water use low. Stanford is not included in this assessment because of the unique nature of their service area. They are not included in the residential calculations. The last section here, agency profiles. Every agency has one of these at the end of the report, and we also reflect it on the website. If you are looking for service area information, total population, area size, alternative supply sources, the best place to check is the agency profiles on the website and in the report. It provides also supply by source, demand by sector, per capita water use, and water operations infrastructure. So typically storage tanks or intertie information is also included in the agency profiles, as well as their contact information. We try to update this every year. In conclusion, BAWSCA's annual survey is the most referenced document that BAWSCA produces. It informs a lot of our other work, for example, the regional water demand and conservation studies, as well as our Strategy 2050, which we are currently in the process of producing. It provides a summary of key characteristics of water use and water resource information within the region. It is a quick one-stop shop for all things BAWSCA related as terms to water resource information and demographics. And then BAWSCA continues to look for ways to improve the document and to enhance the look of it, and to enhance further work efforts that it ultimately informs. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you so much. And I do encourage everyone to go ahead and look at it on the website. Easy to find and comprehensive and very interesting. And for questions, Director Andrews.
Forgive me, I have not seen it on the website yet, but wanted to know if they have historical data on the agency profiles, similar to what you have on the slide here. Okay, great.
So
Okay.
for the water supply information, we do have back, I want to say, at 5 years. 5 years of production, consumption, and GPCD is what we have on there.
By agency?
By agency,
great.
yes.
And Director Hardy.
I'm excited I get to read another water report. But I will say, where I just came from is from Valley Water. And they reported their average was 62 gallons per person per day. And so we're in a much better place. It's hard to say because they take in a lot of the South County, which is, it may include some agriculture. It wasn't really clear. But the fact that we are below 60 per capita means a lot and says that we have really done a good job of getting the message out there. And I will say that when I talk to residents, just even walking precincts, sometimes the first thing they'll tell me is what they're doing to save water, which is amazing. And I know we've all seen the bad news about the missing snowpack and what there was there melted. So it will be interesting to hear the messaging from some quarters as to that we're over-preparing, because I think we truly do need to prepare. This year looked really good at the beginning and not so much now. So I appreciate the hard work, and like I said, one more fun report to read. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Director Bella.
Thank you. Yes, good job here, Kyle. And I was wondering if this was done with the participation of the water managers. Was this presented to them? I was wondering what kind of comments you have from them.
Sure. Yes, we reach out in October of every year to the water managers, who then allocate it to the appropriate staff to input water use data in our water conservation database. which we recently upgraded. Now that database has data as far back as, I want to say at this point, about 2005. So pretty significant, which allows us to pull data all at once, which is great. And we typically don't present it to them at the end of the year, although we did at the last WMR meeting, but that's not quite, we don't do it on a yearly basis. We let them know that the report is available, and we work with them on edits. So when I put the document together, I send it back to the water managers to provide any edits or any corrections. And then I have to get 100% basically buy-in, or they have to check it off before we actually produce the report.
Referring them to the website that is up already.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always make an announcement that it is produced and ready for review.
Thank you. Director Chambers.
Yes, the main thing I want to say is thank you very much for doing this. I mean, it's hard to get good information, and I was really glad to been using this report for many years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Director Stevenson.
Yeah, just curious, somebody, I apologize if it's in the website environment, but the definition and what water uses are in dedicated irrigation?
Yes, we do have that in the report. I don't know off the top of my head, though. I'll have to get back to you on that.
I have some sense of it. I don't know if Danielle has a better sense, or Tom. Dedicated irrigation so typically on new construction, some agencies are requiring an irrigation meter and a residential indoor meter for a new construction activity. Typically, that wouldn't be done on a existing home site.
Yeah.
But that's where you'd see dedicated irrigation. It would show up there.
Okay, so it's picking up demand for water uses, both residential and commercial, but predominantly new construction.
I think so, and it's all outside. I think the point of it is it's dedicated irrigation, so it's all outside water,
Okay.
rather than commingled, as a lot of our meters are. I'm
Yeah.
sure the meter at your residence is indoor and outdoor use.
So is it safe to say that the residential use category has outside irrigation usage still contained within it, which then skews the numbers on use and maybe sets a different target or understanding about conservation eventually in the face of a drought?
It's certainly a new data collection that is being made as this develops. It hasn't been going on for very long.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Director Chambers.
A lot of that water is from like parks and common greens. So irrigation's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But you do have dedicated meters.
Excellent. I think that is all our questions and comments. And do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none. And this is a non-action item. And if you think of anything else, just reach out to Director Smagel or directly to Kyle and let him know. But not for this report, which is done, but for next year, if you think of something helpful. Thank you. And then we will move on to the CEO report.
Great. So I just have one item that I wanted to report on, a little bit of a repeat from the board meeting on the first part, but there is a development. And so I wanted to just give the board an update. As you'll recall, in San Francisco's 10-year CIP program, one of the big items is the Millbrae Operations Center. So we have encouraged, the staff of BAWSCA has encouraged Millbrae and San Francisco to come together at a staff level and try to understand the differences and understand possible solutions to the issues here. We did have a meeting on March 18th. I reported this on the 19th at the board verbally, but San Francisco PUC staff held a meeting at their Millbrae Operations Center. So a number of the key San Francisco staff were there. Millbrae staff, including Tom Williams, was there. Vice Mayor Rinaldi was there. And Tom and I from BAWSCA were there. We had a tour of the site, as I mentioned, and a discussion of the work that was proposed. And they also provided documents detailing the kind of some of the plans that had been made in 2021, as well as the plan that they were focused on in 2025, and some of the cost estimates associated with those projects. Since that time, San Francisco sent a letter to 3 assembly members who had corresponded to the commission, and the San Francisco letter has said that they will pause work on the project once they get to the 35% design phase, which I believe their indication was that would have happened before today. The letter said it was by April 3rd, and that they would spend about 90 days looking at a potential new alternative that would preserve the OSH, the Outdoor Supply Hardware retail operations, and that they would then bring that alternative or bring the alternatives to Millbrae, and I think would communicate with BAWSCA as well about the cost and logistics and other indications about that new alternative. So we expect to see something from them in the summer, and we'd love to report back to the board when we get that information, let you know how that might affect the budget, how that might affect the CIP, and how BAWSCA might evaluate where San Francisco is going to end up going with the project. So that's my quick report on that item. Again, we're kind of in a little bit of a waiting game, waiting for San Francisco to do that additional work.
We do have public comment, in particular on this item. Is this a good time to take that public comment? Okay. Vice Mayor Rinaldi.
Testing, can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. So thank you, Chair Ragsdale, Vice Chair Hamilton, and members of the Policy Committee. I'm here today on behalf of Millbrae to request that BAWSCA formally agendize the Millbrae Yard project for discussion. The core question before us is simple. Is spending between $500 million and $1 billion on this facility truly in the best interest of ratepayers? We're all aware that economic times are difficult. Just last week, Mayor Lurie announced the layoff of 500 San Francisco employees to help close an $800 million deficit over the next 2 years. At the same time, many workers across the region are being displaced by rapid advances in AI. And globally, we're in the middle of a conflict involving Iran with gas prices at historic highs. Households are feeling the pressure from every direction. Against that backdrop, we have to ask, should ratepayers be expected to shoulder a $500 million to $1 billion project when the alternative analysis did not fully evaluate leasing available office space or using other off-site parcels? That question deserves a transparent, public, and data-driven discussion. Millbrae recently had a cordial meeting with SFPUC staff and BAWSCA representatives. We appreciated the dialogue, but the meeting did not resolve the core issue. When we visited the Millbrae Yard, we observed that the site had limited activity because most SFPUC employees work in the field, not at the yard itself. That observation only reinforces the need to examine whether a full rebuild is the most effective cost-driven solution. Our request today is straightforward. We're asking BAWSCA to agendize this project so the committee and the full board can evaluate whether an independent, comprehensive, alternative analysis is warranted. Millbrae is simply asking SFPUC to study real alternatives, leasing office space, using other parcels, and comparing those costs to the proposed rebuild. And there is one more important question. Why did SFPUC's 2019 alternative analysis keep OSH in every scenario and recommend a single 5-story building for both admin and lab functions, but in the 2021 analysis removed OSH entirely and proposed 2 separate buildings instead? That shift represents a major cost change, and the ratepayers deserve clarity on how and why that decision was made. I want to close by returning to BAWSCA's mission: reliable water, high-quality water, a fair price. On reliability and quality, SFPUC delivers. Hetch Hetchy is one of the most reliable and pure water sources in the country. But on the question of a fair price, we cannot answer that without a complete alternative analysis. And for anyone who may be skeptical of that concern, I'll leave you with one final question. Do you know exactly how much this project will impact your agency's water rates? If we cannot answer that, then we owe it to the ratepayers to pause, study the alternatives, and ensure we're making the most responsible financial decision. And one last thing I want to leave you with. This was a headline from 2024. SF office sells for a stunning 90% discount from 2016 price in the SF gate. And then here today from the California Post, April 7th, 2026, office towers plunge up to a whopping 95% off as a fire sale sweeps the U.S. market. So leasing or buying existing building would be much more affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I will see if there's any other public comment. Seeing none, back to you. Oh, Director Hardy, thank you.
This is a hard one because in some ways we're being asked to step into a civil war where our one concern is that we may have some input is over price. But in looking at this and thinking about it, I was wondering from a historic point of view or possibly from a legal point of view, do we have a limitation of what we should and shouldn't do? Have we ever been part of or been asked by SFPUC what they should and shouldn't do as far as their infrastructure? And that's where I needed some more information just from a historic point of view, because I felt like we're on new waters.
I don't know if we have any response to that or just more to ponder as this continues, because they are on a 3-month pause, so we have time to ponder. Yep. And is there anything else in the CEO report?
No, unless there's any questions about the CEO letter, I would be done with the CEO report.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions? Checking in with Dr. Stevenson. All right, moving on. So as I said at the beginning, we don't need the closed session today because there is no updates on either of those items. And so we aren't reporting back from closed session. So moving on to comments of committee members. Does anyone have any special announcements? Or I know there's a time capsule. Time capsule in Burlingame is going to be happening tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're loading that up.
Yeah.
Beyond that, 4 o'clock at the Burlingame. Oh, actually here at the Rec Center. And
Yeah.
Director Hardy.
Just real quick, it's interesting that we talk about Valley Water, and we get some water from them, but they were also talking about how they also buy from us. And I know in electricity, which my city does a lot more of because we have our own there is this back and forth, and we're even asking for more ability to change in real time, especially with electricity. As I say, with electricity, it's really easy to move and hard to store, where water is the other way around. It's easier to store and very hard to move. But it's interesting that I think going down the road, we're going to have to be very nimble and make certain that we have ability to work together with other agencies as far as handling our most precious resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Vela.
Just a quick comment in the letter from the CEO. There was a last paragraph about the tour, the Hetch Hetchy tour.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And for those who haven't been, I highly recommend that you go. Even those who have been maybe a few years ago, you should go back, because all the things that we're talking about and the comments that we heard earlier from the Vice Mayor in Millbrae, you understand it better if you understand the system. So I highly recommend attending to that tour, especially if you haven't been.
It-
And I will say this again, at the big board meeting as well.
And if I could add to that, I think some of the biggest CIP projects have to do with the Moccasin area. It's really hard to get there. It's not a place that you normally pass by. I mean, Millbrae is obviously relatively close to all of us here. But the penstocks are the single biggest project that they're contemplating in the 10-year period, as well as some new buildings, replacement buildings in the Moccasin area. So that's well worth a tour, even if you've been on the tour before, to understand what it is that they're proposing in terms of capital projects there.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I,
Maybe we
Second,
should just
third-
say for the
third
record
that.
that the dates of that, because I know
Yes.
I wrote it down and answered
Yes.
back, I wanted to go. June 16th, June 17th.
thank you. And if you've been before, like, I know I've been a couple times, so I said, I've got it written in my calendar, but I want to be last on the list. But also, yes, put it on your calendar, even if you're on the wait list, because people's plans do change last minute. And there's nothing else. We will adjourn the meeting at 2:48 PM. Thank you.